Hi, welcome to Rick Snyder's Washington, here on YouTube, where you get the longer stories and the better stuff. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and share to my channel, Rick Snyder's Washington. Thanks very much. All right, today's story is about Jim Zorn. Yeah, okay, I know you're thinking, what? But it's really an interesting story about the Redskins coach and how it all worked out. One of the craziest years ever at Redskin Park under Dan Snyder. That's saying a lot. Okay, so let's go to the end of the 2007 season. Sean Taylor has been murdered. Terrible tragedy that went on there. And there's about 5 weeks to go in the season. Team is rocky, and Joe Gibbs is coaching, and he was a perfect man for this. Perfect time for Joe. I think in the next 5 weeks, Joe did the best job of his career in a lot of ways. I know you're thinking, well, he won 3 Super Bowls. Yeah, but I'm telling you, I was at the park every day pretty much back then, and Joe would talk after practice, and he's trying to pull everybody together because the terrible tragedy happened to Sean. And then they had to play just a couple of days later after the funeral, and they lost. And basically had 4 games to go. And they managed to win them all. I mean, it could have collapsed. Many other coaches, that team would have gone 0-4. But instead, they're going into the playoffs. And I really thought this was a Super Bowl destiny kind of thing. And later on, Joe said the same thing. But they had to play Seattle. They had a chance to win that game, but just didn't. And they got knocked out. And suddenly it's all over. Well, in the weeks leading up to that, anybody who had been out there every day listening to Joe knew that he was really thinking of leaving. He had a grandson down in North Carolina that had cancer, a young child, and he really wanted to be there for his family for that. And he just didn't want to be in Washington anymore. Simple as that. And if you listen to him, you just figure this was going to happen. So the day after the loss to Seattle, we're back at Redskin Park in the old crowded press room. You're on top of each other. And Jim Dusabella, an old friend of mine, it was his last day before retiring. So we decided to let him ask the first question. And I'll never forget, he goes, Joe, today's my last day. How about you? And, a lot of people didn't understand that question, but Deuce was going right at him about, are you retiring? And Joe kind of said, today's not the day for it. Okay, what's that mean? After that presser opened, I saw something I've never seen otherwise in the 43 years I've been doing this. The press room broke up into focus groups, and we all tried to parse what Joe had just said. And most of us got it right and said, looks like he's going to retire. And the next day, we're back there, and he is retiring. One guy who didn't figure it out right was Dan Snyder. He and Vinny Serrato were back in his office, which is, 100 feet if you had to walk it. And he's watching the presser on TV when Joe retires. And he's caught flat-footed. They're like, what? And I'm like, don't you read the paper, dude? I mean, we all figured this out yesterday, but they are flat-footed. And, it's already a week into the postseason. So, the coaching search gets a little crazy at that point because people are already jumping for the best candidates. So now he's like, who we go? And they tried to wait for some people because they were in the playoffs, and that didn't work out. Snyder's reputation being what it was back then, especially not everybody was lining up to come to Washington for it. So, they end up waiting until, the very end. And they said we had a list of 50 candidates. Well, Jim Zorn must have been 51 because he was not the first choice in there. They should have gone and got Russ Grimm. That's what they made the mistake there, but Snyder didn't like Russ Grimm, so it wasn't happening. Okay, so Jim Zorn has been hired as an offensive coordinator, even though there's not a head coach. This is another mistake Snyder's doing. He's hiring coaches without a head coach. Jim Zorn's never been an offensive coordinator. He gets a call from Snyder's people to meet Dan at Dan's mansion out in Potomac, Maryland. So Jim just drives over, figuring he wants to talk about offense or something. And he gets there, and Snyder says, I want to talk to you about the head coaching job. Zorn is completely caught off guard, and he realizes he's way underdressed for this, and he actually leaves and goes back home and puts on his suit and tie and comes back to interview. And I know Snyder's interviews for head coaches can last a long time, but he did with Jim too. But finally he comes in and says, I'm introducing our new coach, Jim Zorn. Well, I grew up watching Jim Zorn as a quarterback. I knew he was good at that. He really didn't have a big coaching resume, though. But he comes out, he gives, a real fiery kind of speech, and he says, he's looking forward, to his son wearing the maroon and black. And right there, and then my friends, yeah, you knew something was wrong. And at the end of that press conference, I remember John Common and I looked at each other and said, this ain't going to work. We could just tell right away, this ain't going to work. But Jim Zorn starts off 6-2. And I'm thinking, maybe they got lucky. Maybe this guy is someone just out of nowhere they're going to find. And he's talking about skinning, coyotes after practice, where he gives us these stories. He's got these Z screens that are out there to shade players from the heat. I never saw that otherwise. They were pretty cool, though. And you're just figuring, who knows? Maybe they got lucky. And then it all turned, and it went 2-6 for the rest of the year. He's 8-8. All right, come back the next season, and he's on a short leash, and everybody knows it. And this is totally unfair to everybody involved, except for Snyder, but he's flipping coaches back then too quickly. And Jim Zorn knows he's on a short leash. And they start off poorly, as expected. And suddenly, here comes a guy, Sherm Lewis. And Sherm's going to be a consultant. And just kind of review things and see if he can, give some tips, about getting this offense going. And within a week, he's the offensive coordinator. And at that point, we talked to him, and he doesn't even know who the guys are in the building. They don't know who he is. They're like, what is this? Is this the offensive coordinator? So we had a presser with Sherman, and we talked to him, and he say, "Sure, what have you been doing lately? You've been out of the NFL for a while." He goes, "Well, I've been calling bingo down the hall." "You've been calling bingo down the hall?" "Yeah, and driving Meals on Wheels." "Okay, yeah, you were just ready to go, huh? Okay." And you know what? That sounds terrible. And guess what? They finished the year 4-12, and everybody disappeared, and Zorn was fired within hours afterwards. Was this fair to him? Well, he really shouldn't have ever had the job. He certainly got a nice payoff for a few years there on that, and he didn't really do a whole lot of coaching afterwards. It was kind of his moment in the sun, but hey, he got paid, so it's not the worst thing that happens to people. But, it was a total no-win situation from the very start. Too bad, because Jim Zorn is a hell of a nice guy. And I wish him well on everything. No hard feelings on that one. So that's the story of Jim Zorn. And then they got Mike Shanahan after that. And Bruce. So, that sure worked out too on everything. All right. Anyway, that's the story of Jim Zorn. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, like, subscribe, and share on YouTube. They love saying that. The algorithm goes, woohoo, I like that. And it gives me better rankings or something. I don't know. Anyway, and you can see the daily stuff over on the other social media platforms where I talk for 2 minutes. But here I am at 8. It's the better stories. They take a little longer. So I'm Rick Snyder for Rick Snyder's Washington. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.